Have you ever wondered what it's like to combine arts, history, and hospitality into a career that expands within two continents? We dive into a fascinating world of bartending and hospitality, exploring a cultural contrast and how is it to be a female in a male-dominated industry. Joining us today, it's Selma, a Danish-American hospitality professional whose career has taken her from dive bars in New York to managing Michelin star establishment and writing a book that blends Nordic heritage with cocktail culture. With a passion for history, sustainability, and mentorship, Selma has worked with some of the most prestigious bars and restaurants, including Ace Hotel, Michelin star Aska, and Hotel Chelsea. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation here. I'm actually honored that you are joining us, because taking into consideration all of the things that you've done, probably not many people in Copenhagen got to know you yet. So please let us know, enlighten us, why you actually chose to come back to Copenhagen.
I mean, I was born in Denmark and I am considering myself at least half Danish. And having spent the majority of my at least adult life in the United States, I really wanted to come back and be a part of my culture and my heritage, but also because I think that it was very exciting for me to think that I can do some things here that I've done in the States that maybe not are the same here, and I have something to add to the table, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. And it actually leads to one of the questions that I wanted always to ask you. What kind of cultural differences you see between America and Denmark? Because in my view, as an foreigner, as an outsider, I believe there is a huge difference, but I've never been to USA, so maybe you can elaborate a bit more about this.
I mean, specifically on the bar scene or just in general?
Specifically on the bar scene and hospitality, let's say, it may be a broader audience, because we might have somebody who is in the kitchen, who is a waiter, and they want to know, is that American dream real, that you go to America and everything is different? Or
well, it's very different in the way that we don't have the same security in the States. You rely on tips. That means that you can go in on a slow shift on a Monday night and spend 10 hours behind the bar and make $40, which is, 300 krona or something like that. You can also work a shift where you make $1,500, which is, 10,000 krona. So, but you work your way up. So in America, you usually start as brunch bartender, which is annoying because you're really busy and you just make the same 3 drinks and it sucks. Then maybe you get a Monday night or a Tuesday night when it's super slow and you sort of work your way up. And then once you are really good and been at a place for a while, you get the good shifts. And I mean, at the end of my time over there, I worked 3 days a week and made an insane amount of money. I would make between 1,000 and 2,000 a night. So that meant that I could work less and have a better work-life balance. Where here in Denmark, it's different in a way where it's you're hourly and you get the same amount whether it's busy or slow. So obviously, there's good sides to both of them. I don't know which one I prefer because it's still quite new. Obviously, the Danish version where I get vacation. If I'm sick, I'm not, gonna lose my apartment. So that's very, very good. And I do believe that the Danish version is better, for sure. I will say another big difference, and for me that was a huge shock, is the guests.
Okay.
Danes are not used to going out in the same way that Americans are. American people go out, if not once a week, then twice. In New York City, it's even more. You go out almost every night because you eat out. You meet your friends at a bar after work on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not just Thursday and Friday. And that means that I feel like Americans are a lot better at being guests, where in Denmark, we're not quite used to it yet, where it's very new to go out and be social in public settings. And that means that the Danes don't really have the manners yet. And I'm hoping that that will change, because that has been like the negative experience for me coming here. It's just people are very entitled, and can be very rude because they have this "the customer is always right" mantra that, because we go out so rarely, you are used to it being a very special occasion and you expect a lot. And of course you should expect a lot, but the customer is not always right, as everyone in the service industry will tell you. And it's funny because this quote it's very old. Some people attribute it to Harry Selfridge, who was the department store owner. And it's actually just part of a quote. And I think the original quote is something like, "The customer is always right in the manner of taste."
Yes.
So we are talking about, if nobody buys this, then we shouldn't sell it, versus you can just walk into any place and act like a little brat, and that's not what the quote is about. So I'm hoping that, in Copenhagen it's a little different. It's a little more metropolitan and people are a lot better, but,
Absolutely.
there is definitely a difference there.
And actually, I know you have a big history with hospitality, but I also actually discovered that you studied something else. You studied arts, right?
Yes, I went to art school.
You went to art school.
I went to art school, and I thought I was going to be an artist or a curator or an art teacher. And I actually, before I moved to the States, for a little while, I worked as a second and third grade art teacher in public school. And I really thought, okay.
How did this shift happening from the art to the hospitality? Was it something that you planned? Was it something that you actually went there to USA, got a job and say, I really like to do this more than that? Or it's something that you just got in there?
Well, I started working in restaurants when I was very young. My uncle had a restaurant where, when I was 12 years old, this is super illegal, but we don't care, because it was the early 90s. And
it was family business.
It was family business.
You were
so
not
I started
paid.
doing dishes and clearing table, and as a lot of young people, I would work in my holidays. I would work in restaurants, and my family comes from a long line of service industry. We worked at castles, kind of like Downton Abbey, as the help in generations. So it always came natural to me. But then, you are being told in Danish society, you need an education, you need to do this. And when I came to America, I couldn't work for the first 3 months. And back then, you could work under the table just for cash. So I just got a job at a restaurant and enjoyed it so much. I had so much fun, and even though it was insanely hard work, I just immediately found friends that to this day, 18 years later, are still my best friends, because there was this camaraderie. And I decided that I really loved doing it, and just decided that, okay, if I want to do this, I want to be the best. So just nerded out completely and did everything I could to,
yeah. So once you got into the industry, basically, you went with the whole mentality, I want to perform. I want to go there. So you kind of had this goal from the first moments, as you mentioned.
Well, I don't know if it was a goal. I definitely felt very encompassed in it. One of my favorite things in the world, my biggest hobby, is history. And there's so much history to the restaurant industry, to different cocktails, different styles of cocktails. And for me, it was just so easy to apply that. And it just became a huge passion of mine. It never felt like work to me, because I got to nerd out about things. And I worked with people that felt the same way. And we would, tell each other things. Oh, have you heard about this cocktail? I found it in this weird old book. And it became this organism of just baby bartenders that just got so into it that we kept topping each other and egging each other on in this whole industry.
Okay, it's actually fascinating how you say that, taking the history as your hobby and transposing that into hospitality, and how much it affected you in the end.
Yeah.
While also I see a bit of a connection with the art school, because everything it's connected in a way. Do you actually have, when you started, you said you started from a very, very low position as everybody else, I guess, in this industry, or most of us in the industry.
Or at least you should.
Or at least you should.
Yeah.
That's definitely the belief. How did you exceed? I mean, I've seen you going in a lot of places, a lot of famous places, starting probably, you climbed the ladder. Was it a smooth path? Was it a hard path? Where did you went? It was more like a straight line, or it was just a jungle?
No, I mean, it was all over the place. And again, it was about, making connections and being in the right groups. It was very much about working very, very hard. I remember going to job interviews and like memorizing cocktails, the entire menu. I would go into a boot camp with myself for weeks before, and I would be so nervous, like throwing up on the way, because I really, really wanted it so badly. And it was definitely not easy, and especially, being a woman in a male-dominated industry is never super easy, but luckily, I'm so incredibly lucky because I have a career that doesn't feel like work to me. I love everything that I do, every aspect of it. And I feel so lucky because I don't think I could have been a teacher or a bank teller or something else. I could have done that, but I wouldn't, it would be a job for me. It wouldn't be something that I get to do, and I feel lucky that I get to do it.
Okay.
So definitely be passionate about it. And if you can't find that passion, then you should find something that you're passionate about and do that instead.
All right. Talking about passions, I've read your book, and I got your book. I have it in here with me today.
No, that's so funny. How did you find it? I can't even find a copy.
I have my source.
Oh, very nice.
So that's not a problem. And in the book, you said one person that actually inspired you, it was your grandmother.
My grandmother, yes.
And I guess now that I have a bit more understanding on your family and running the family business, it makes a lot much more sense of what you are debating in the book about all of the natural ingredients that you can source yourself from surrounding. And how the book was perceived in USA, because in Denmark, I believe it's something nowadays, at least, it's something more common, or it's something more trendy to source yourself all of the ingredients. How was it the perception of the USA?
It's a very Scandinavian approach, and it's something that I definitely felt that I could add and bring to the American approach for sure. And it's become a little bigger, but it's still very niche. In Denmark, we are very used to having nature right outside of our door and sort of live with the seasons and use seasonal ingredients very, very much. Whereas in the States, it's one big melting puddle. And I see a lot of places do this more and more, definitely. When I started writing this book, I was working at a really amazing cocktail bar called Donna Cocktail Club. And I had been trying for 2 years to put an aquavit cocktail on the menu. And they were just like, no, it's too weird. People are not going to buy it. What are you doing? And now, kind of like mezcal at some point was the hip thing to drink. Now aquavit has its moment in the States very, very much. And I think that's really, really fun.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that, and I'm happy to hear that people over there as well are more willing to go into different approaches. So,
and definitely sustainability is becoming very, very big in the bar world over there. I think it is very big in Denmark in general, and Scandinavia and Europe, because we have the European Union and they help us sort our things. And, having a return system for our bottles, we don't have that in the States, and it's so sad. Or not really in the same way as here, but there are places like Maze in New York, which I really love, that are super sustainable and do a lot of that. Little Red Door in Paris is another amazing example, and it is becoming more and more normal. But when this book came out in 2018, it was definitely, a little different. But also this is, as you said, a very grandmothery book. It's very,
I mean, I loved it. I
Thank
read
you.
most of the recipes in there, and I'm looking forward to try some of them at home. It might require a bit more patience from my side to go and find all of the ingredients, but definitely I want to try some of them. And then, how is it actually? How was this transition? Did you perceive it as a transition from, let's say, being behind the bar to going managing a bar to writing a book to do all of this journey?
Yes, very much. And I'm still, my true passion is bartending. And I still bartend as often as I can because I think it's the best ever. Managing is sort of like the necessary next step. And because I've had so many amazing mentors in my career, I want to do that for someone else as well. It's very important for me. Recently, and this is something, I sound like a grandmother myself, but it brings me so much joy. I have 2 prior barbacks that I trained, and they became bartenders under my wing. And now one of them is the GM at Mace, and the other one just won the speed rack, which is insane.
Okay.
And these were little babies that I took under my wings, and it makes me so proud. So although I would prefer to be a bartender the rest of my life and just keep my head down and do my thing, then I think it's really important that if you have the opportunity to give someone else that knowledge or that push or that interest or that passion, then it's definitely something that you should do.
That's interesting, and I believe it's fulfilling as well. Now, I actually have some questions that are not. Let's say you met new people in the industry. What advices would you give them to excel in this career?
My big one is that every task is an opportunity to learn. You have to really want it, and always remember it's just drinks. That's it. And that's actually something that I see a little bit that is now a thing in the States that is moving to here, or hopefully moving to here, is that we can't take ourselves too seriously. It is just drinks. The whole, you look like an accountant from the 1890s, and, it's, to a certain point, you can't take yourself so serious, and you can't take the drink so serious. It is.
So you need that room to.
You have to have fun. Yeah. It is the main thing, and it's like something I do a lot. Is I love making my cocktails fun and colorful, and throw some candy in there and light it on fire. And the more fun you can have, the better. And that's like, it's become. I feel like the bar industry has become very stiff in a way where it's like, oh, we have to be so serious, and you got to stir this way. And yes, the technique is important, but if you don't have fun with it, it becomes very stagnated, and it becomes very boring, and it becomes exclusive in a way where people don't feel like they can be included in it. And that's really dangerous, because then it just becomes this little niche of people that are you're not in the club. And one of the things that is very normal in the States is everyday people that are not bartenders drink cocktails and are excited about cocktails, and when they have friends over, they make cocktails for them, where in Denmark, you go out and you drink a cocktail because you want to try something, but it's not something that we share with everyone. People don't really have a home bar. They don't get excited about making a specific drink, unless it's glögg for Christmas, but that's about it, I think. So that's something that I think is really fun, and something that I think we can see in Denmark be more normalized cocktails, because if you have friends over, you drink wine, or if you're 25, you drink Smirnoff Ice. But having someone buy a cocktail book and want to make drinks for your friends, kind of like learning a new dish and want to make it for your friends, that's super interesting.
All right. So when you wrote this book,
yeah,
you wrote it with that thing into your mind, right?
I definitely wanted people to have fun making drinks at home, but at this point, I was working at a place called Aska, which is a new Nordic restaurant, one of the first in New York, and it started as a pop-up where I was a bartender at a place called Kinfolk Studios. That was, I mean, it was insane. It was not a cool bartending place, but it was, I could work 2 days a week making vodka Red Bull. And my best friend and I had an apartment in Brooklyn that we shared, and then we had a house upstate. So we would work Friday and Saturday, go upstate, and just live the country life. And I mean, you made so much money. It was stupid.
Sounds like a dream life.
I would have a tote bag and just carry like a whole thing of cash home. It was, I made so much money there, but it wasn't fulfilling because you just dealt with drunk assholes on drugs till 7 in the morning. But it was definitely fun to do. So it was this really cool space where these guys were friends and they're super into bicycles, and they moved to Japan together, opened a bicycle shop there that they turned into a coffee shop, bicycle shop, and then they moved to Brooklyn and made one there as well. And then they made a little bar and they started doing pop-ups. So this guy, Fredrik Beselius, who's a Swedish chef, did a pop-up, and this was in 2012, and him and I we have the same background, grandparents that took us foraging, the folklore in Scandinavia, making everything from scratch. Immediately we just clicked and had so much fun those 3 months where I would make all the drinks and he would make all the food, and we sort of worked really well together. Like we took all the food ingredients into the cocktails. And so when he opened his brick and mortar restaurant in Williamsburg in 2016, I came on as the beverage director, and it was really, really fun. It was like super Noma-esque. And it was amazing because it was one of the first restaurants in New York that sort of had that feel, and it became super, super, super fancy and popular. We got 2 Michelin stars immediately off the bat, which was amazing. And so I was in that mindset at that point when the book was written. I was also working as a beverage director at the Ace Hotel in New York City, where I was doing the cocktails for the Breslin restaurant, which is the opposite of New Nordic. It's like, you know, Scotch eggs and pork roast and very like New American. So it was like 2 very different places, and that's the thing, you evolve over the years. You become super into, at some point I was really into all the old-timey cocktails. I had the Savoy cocktail book, and I would just nerd out about all these 1920s and 1930s cocktails. And then I was obviously super into the New Nordic there, and I really found a voice also because I was from Scandinavia, and I didn't know any other Scandinavian people in the industry. So that was really, really fun. I sort of had like my little niche that I could excel on, and I just dove into that. And with the book, you know, it's a love letter to my grandmother, who was a huge part of my life, and she was very, you know, I'm old, I was born before the internet, you know, kind of stuff. So we had a whole different way, you know, I grew up with her, like we made everything from scratch. We butchered our own animals, we grew our own vegetables, we went foraging in the woods for mushrooms or herbs or anything like that. And bringing your heritage into your passion is like absolutely the best advice I can give to anyone, because I don't think that you could have the same passion for Danish flavors as I can, because it's something that I have a personal relationship with. But you have something that you can bring to the table. And this book, it's a lot of cocktails. There's also some food recipes. And a thing with this is that, and it's always been my mantra, that every single drink I make, it tells a story. It references a time or a place or a smell that's super important to me. And so all these cocktails come with a little backstory, mostly for the guests, because they also like that they're not just getting something. It's not just a cold exchange of me making a drink for you, here's some money, boom. I tell the story of, okay, this cocktail is named after this old legend from the Danish woods, and that makes it even more real. It makes it even more personable. And again, you get an experience and something memorable, not just a transaction. A booze.
A booze
A
transaction,
booze,
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's quite interesting. You mentioned something about the different cultures, and also I remember from one of our discussions before, how is it to work with this cultural different background on a large scale?
Oh, it's amazing because, you know, it's like traveling constantly. I have worked with people from all over the world, and I've been so lucky because I was in New York, which is just such a melting pot, and learned because I would bring aquavit cocktail to Rain's Law Room or Dear Irving and be very passionate about it and tell about the ingredients and why they go so well together and what's the story behind the name or something like that. And equally, you know, my American coworker or my Mexican coworker or anything, they would have the same passion. So I would learn some things that I wouldn't learn just reading a book or going on vacation. And even more so, you also get to meet people and nerd out in a different way. We've had menus that was entirely Star Wars inspired. We had a Spice Girl menu at some point. So you really get to have fun with people and nerd out. We've had, you know, once a month we had a bartender Dungeons and Dragons for years, which was really fun because then you see people not just at work, you see them nerd out about different things that aren't necessarily cocktails, but you can bring that into the cocktails. And it's so much fun if you make, I don't think I've ever had a cocktail menu at a bar where there wasn't at least one Star Wars reference. Mm-hmm. And it's so fun because then when people get it, they're like, wait, is this? Or a song or something. So that's another way for you to interact with someone when they get a song reference or a movie reference or something. And if you have someone get excited about something the way you're excited about it, you can talk about it, and it becomes a whole part of the experience as well.
Mm-hmm. How about when you have different nationalities into your team? Nowadays, it's a bit more common to have this multicultural team. How do you deal it as a manager, or how do you make it work, taking into consideration you have completely different cultures? Let's say you have Argentinians and then you have Danes, where the relationships between the workers are
I think
opposite.
I'm a little hard on that because this is work and, you know, you just got to make it work. Mm-hmm. And that's up to them. You know, if you're here to work and make the best of it. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be here. But I think something like the United States, it's very set up where all the bars I worked at, every single barback has always been a super hardworking Mexican or Hispanic guy. And that's just something that they always get hired for. I don't know why, because I have been lucky enough to have some of them involved under my tuition or my coworkers' tuition where they actually became bartenders. And that's super important too, that you don't get locked into these like national or gender roles where it's like, no, just because most places have Hispanic barbacks doesn't mean that you cannot become a bartender or the other way around. Like if it's, you know, yeah, so that's super important, I think.
It is. And you mentioned you had a lot of people under your wing, let's say like that. Are you intending to do something in Denmark as well to push, let's say, a bit more females into the world, or not necessarily females? Are you intending to open something like that in here?
It is my dream, 100%, to open a place here in Denmark. And although it's always on merit and talent, of course, I think that it's important that I, as a woman, want to give back to the community. I think that it's important that we see a little more diversity, whether it's gender or culture, if you will, and that there is space for that. and that's something that is very important to me. So I think I would be biased and definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, taking into consideration all of the experience that you've had, I mean, I know a side of it, but I'm pretty sure you had a lot more experiences in the USA. So if you can give us a bit of a briefly description, how did you went from one place to another, and what are some places that you really want to mention and meant something for you a bit more into your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have worked in some crazy places, meaning just the diviest, dirtiest dive bars you can imagine, where, open beer and pour shots, and then one day you get a job at a restaurant, and that's when you start learning cocktails and work your way up. And I think it's important to know that you have to put in that work. You have to accept that you can't just buy some expensive bar tools and take a bartending course somewhere, a certificate. It is hard work, and it's sort of like, if you want to be a carpenter, you have to be an apprentice first. And that's how I see the service industry. It is, you can't just go in and become a bartender, because if you haven't barbacked or waited tables or done any of those things, or worked at really, really shitty or hard places, one, I don't think you earned your place in the same way, but you also don't know sort of all the hard work that goes behind. Like, I have been managers at places where I have cleaned bathrooms and gone and gotten ice, and it's important that if you've done these things, you know everything that builds up to the perfect experience. The most important person in the entire bar is the one who does the dishes and gets the ice. I mean, the barback is the backbone of the whole thing. I started just working in dive bars, and I actually, throughout my entire career, kept an open shift at a dive bar. I think it's so important. There was a place called, there's a couple of dive bars that a lot of bartenders go to, but when I think about it, it's so fun, because we had all these high-end bartenders who did all this amazing stuff, and then once a month you go and work a shift at your old dive bar, because it's just back to your roots and remember who you are and all these things. So that's really fun. I worked at a place that I kept a job at for almost 17 years called Bushwick Country Club. And it is the most amazing, dirty old bar you can imagine, with jukebox, and there's a raccoon that lives in the backyard, and just really, really fun. And whenever I'm back in the States, I take a shift there. And even when I worked at high-end places, I would come back every once in a while and be like, "Can I do a shift, John?" And he's like, "Yeah. Can you do Monday happy hour?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And then you tell all your friends, and they come hang out.
What's the craziest story that you've had into that specific place?
Oh my God, I don't think I can say that on. Actually, I have some crazy stories, but those are not something that you can say in public. But I mean, seeing drunk people go absolutely crazy, or having to lock the doors because there's someone with a gun outside, or, drunk people trying to steal stuff. It's just endless crazy, endless. But I mean, yeah, I can't even think of one. There's just so many crazy people that get mad because they get kicked out and end up, breaking the front window or stuff like that. But I think there's also good things, because you have regulars, and you get to become friends with these regulars, and you befriend a raccoon that lives in the backyard and give him little cheesy puffs, and all of a sudden you have a pet raccoon, which is really fun. So yeah, Great. You meet characters, which is very important for your career as a bartender, because you meet all kinds of people from all kinds of walks of life.
Now, I actually have some questions that are not so, let's say, bright, because we've both been in the industry for quite long, and there are times where you are not so happy. What were sometimes, for instance, through your career working in that many places, what are some bad habits that you somehow picked and got rid of, or might not got rid of as a bartender, or as a waiter, or another position like a front house position, let's say like that?
I mean, I definitely think that when you're in this industry, you can drink too much. And that's something that is just, it's so normalized, especially in the States, where you drink together. Where, and that's something that as I got older, I was like, oh, I'm not going to live forever. I cannot do shots a whole night. And it's something that, you know, that I see in the industry more and more. I have definitely seen it in America. I don't know if it's made its way here, but being a healthy bartender is super, super important. And in the States, we've started doing bartender yoga and bartender mindfulness and all these things. And it's something that, because it's such a hard job physically and mentally, it's something that you have to make an effort to remember, because you can lose yourself in it, whether it's the physical part of working too hard and not getting enough sleep and maybe drinking a little too much, or letting things that are out of your control, like an angry guest or a rude guest, and just don't let it get to you, because the mental strain is just as hard as the physical strain, I think.
Do you have any good practices, for instance, if you have a very, very rude guest? It might be one in America, it might be one in Denmark. What are your ways of getting out of that anger, you know? In front of the guest, we are always smiling. But when you go in the back, what are your ways of saying, okay, it's just a matter of time until I will gonna be back? Do you have a small tricks into your sleeve that you go in the back and then?
Yeah, I mean, I go in the back, but for me, I used to get really upset about it, and it used to really bother me, especially if I was right and my sense of justice I was like, how dare you? And I've learned to just laugh about it. Definitely, I laugh about it, but my biggest thing, and something that I learned as I got older, is the joy of if you can turn that experience around. Because if you end up having this guest actually have a good time, despite them being a ding-dong, then it gives you so much more. And, you know, that's what I always try to do, and I think it's really fun if you can turn the situation around.
That's amazing, and I heard a lot. I mean, I heard people that saying, I'm going in the back, I'm inhaling 2 times, I'm going out, and I'm going with the approach that you just mentioned. But it's actually amazing to see that you got to a point where you do it naturally after a couple of years. So,
and that is, you know, you can choose how the outcome is. You know, it's very important for you to know that you are in control. You can't control their emotions, but you can control how it affects you, and that's a super important thing. Whether you need to go and scream into a pillow in the back, or you just make the best of it, but it's up to you how the situation affects you, and that's how you take care of yourself also.
How did you see the industry evolving through the years, like through the years since you started? And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you had your own bar in the USA,
I did, yes.
Right? How have you seen it from this perspective, a bar owner, a bartender, and also, how did you manage to have time to do it?
I don't know, because when it's something that you're really passionate about, you don't work a set amount of hours and then you go home and you sleep and watch TV and do something. When your hobby is also your job, it's just like one big. It sounds really tacky, but I live and breathe cocktails and hospitality, and for me, it's something that just makes me so happy, and I'm always thinking about something like that. Always. Always thinking about new drinks or ideas for something, or how I can apply certain situations in a hospitality sense. So yeah, it's definitely hard work, for sure.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't feel as hard when you really love doing it.
I have a question for you regarding the bars, because many bartenders are dreaming having their own bar.
Yeah.
How is it to have your own bar? How do you go from bartending to the bar? What do you need actually to be a bar owner? What are the steps aside of obviously probably money?
Money for sure.
For sure, but
You need money, but you also definitely need like community. You can't do it by yourself. You need someone you really, really trust who can help you with it, because there is no way that you can just open a bar yourself and hire people to do certain things for you, because those people don't care about you and they don't care about your bar. But if you have a community around you, or you do it with someone, then it becomes so much more, and it becomes a lot easier. But definitely having your own bar puts a lot more pressure on you, because all of a sudden you have to make it work. You can't just, my shift's over, I'm gonna go home, get some sleep. There's always something.
All right. Were there any times when you said, I had enough of bartending, I had enough of the hospitality industry, and then I want to do something else, completely change career, change industry?
No, not really. I
No?
mean, I've had experiences where I was like, oh my God, I'm done. But 5 minutes after, I'm like, no, you're not.
Okay.
I just think, obviously, sometimes you daydream about having a 9 to 5 and never working weekends, and, can just leave it and you go home and then there's nothing else. But then I don't think I would be as happy as I am now.
All right. Sounds quite interesting. I mean, it's the same thing when you transform the passion into your career. Then I believe is not that as demanding, or at least you don't see it as demanding as the other jobs that you do. So
100%. And for me, it's also just so much more than making a really good drink. It's the community there is around it, and the camaraderie behind the bar, but also the interactions that you have. You're a part of someone's big days. Sometimes people just go out to have a drink and hang out with people, but I've also been part of proposals and weddings and all kinds of things. And yeah, you just get to have a view into other people's lives and have something to do with how they feel in that moment. And that's really exciting.
Great to hear. Also, how was it for you when you came back? You are Danish, but how was it for you when you came back to the position that you did in here in Copenhagen, with the bar that you were in charge for? And the place?
Definitely different. I had to learn the ropes for sure. It's run differently, of course, and I obviously had to learn the Danish way of ordering things and making relationships with vendors and with producers or brands, and that's definitely very different here. I feel like in the States, a lot of the brands are for the sake of bartenders, because they have learned what I'm hoping that the brands in Europe, or at least Denmark, is learning as well, is that the best way to the consumer is through the bartenders. Where here it's much more buyer or consumer approach. They think more about how many bottles of this can I sell to a guest, or how many can you use? We want the guest to like this brand, where it's like, no, if the bartender is excited about your brand, you're going to sell so much. So you need to get the bartenders excited, and then the rest will follow.
All right, so you say that the brands over there, they invest a lot more into bartenders than they do in here.
Definitely, or the industry in a whole. They, the industry here in Denmark, and I'm still quite new to it. Of course, there's many aspects, but it's very much in smaller groups. I don't see it as like one big Copenhagen scene. It's very much like in smaller groups. There's these bars and there's these bars, and I think that I can see Copenhagen being a cocktail bar or a cocktail city in the next couple of years, but it also means that I think us as bartenders or people that run bars have to do something to get everyone excited about it. And
how do they do it in there? Because for instance, in here they started recently. For a couple of years ago, they started to push a bit more into bartenders doing industry events, doing small tastings, masterclasses, and stuff like that. How do they do it in US?
Definitely with master classes, but also doing bartender events, and a lot about, definitely bartender events where they take bartenders on trips. You know, I've been to Guadalajara and helped make mezcal, and I've been, you know, to France, to the cognac region and helped make cognac. All these things where it's like they understand that the more they do for the industry, the more the industry gives back to them. And I don't see that as much in Copenhagen yet. Maybe they throw a couple of bottles if you put their name on the lower end of the menu, but that's as far as it has gone. And you know, there's some sort of prestige also in being in these things. I've been doing conferences in the States for a long time. We've done bartender getaways where we go, it's called Tiki by the Sea. It's really fun, where you go a bunch of bartenders and just immerse yourself in the Tiki culture for 3 days and have fun. We have the Hugi Lao in Florida, which is one of the biggest Tiki conventions. And it's like Comic-Con, but for cocktails. And then, of course, Tales of the Cocktail. You know, if you had something like that in Europe, it would be insane.
Yeah, I actually had a discussion with a couple of friends a while ago. There is top 50 Asia, and there's top 50, but there's nothing alike in Europe.
No, there's not. And I feel like it's a little lazy because I feel like it's just the same 3 bars or 3 places that are like, now we have decided that these are the good places, and then that can change. And then there's not enough like curiosity and playfulness in it, where it's very stagnated. It's very Emperor's New Groove in a way.
All right, that's interesting, and hopefully they will come. Hopefully, with the years.
I think so.
With the years and the more involvement into brands, as you said, into the industry, I hope as well they will come. Then I have a question that is more like a personal question for you. What is going to happen next, if you want to share into your life? Where do you want to go? Where is the next place, career, position? What's your dream, let's say, like that?
Well, my dream is I have sort of like, of course, the history part. I'm working on a new book, and just baby stages, but I really want to do something about the cocktail history in Scandinavia and the history of the bars that we have here. I think it would be very, very interesting. I could see myself continue in the hotel industry. I've done quite a few hotels in the last 5 years. I helped reopen the Chelsea Hotel. First female bartender at the Chelsea Hotel ever, which was really, really cool. I've done the Ace Hotel, and recently I was at the Plaza here in Copenhagen. And there is something about the hotel bar that's always like, I really loved, all the way from, you know, the Raffles in Singapore to the Savoy, or every time I'm in New York, I always go to the Nat King Cole bar at the King Cole bar, at the Regis. It's one of my favorite places. There's something about a hotel bar that's different than a standalone bar, and I've always been drawn to that for some reason. But I think that one of the things that I'm very passionate about is the whole tropical culture in the States. Majority of what I did was tiki and tropical. and I've always been very passionate about it. And there's sort of like a dead market here. It's not really something that's big in Denmark, and I can see it be very big in Denmark if it's done proper.
Absolutely.
Not as a gimmick, but actually with a big passion. So my near goal is to bring true tiki to Denmark.
Bring to tiki to Denmark. That's a very interesting goal. And you mentioned hotel bars as well. And I have a question. I hope some of the listeners or viewers, they were gonna be females, and I take the opportunity in here and you representing the females. Do you believe it's much easier to be a female bartender manager into a hotel world or a bar world, like standalone bar? Which one do you
I think
believe
it's
is
easier
much
in a
easier?
regular standalone bar, because hotel guests at a standalone bar, people kind of know the concept of what they're coming into, and you don't have as many expectations, where in hotel bars, people are coming from all over the world, and they're not coming there for the bar. The bar is just something that's there that is an amenity. And so you will get a little more sexism on your plate, for sure, unfortunately. And it's something where in Denmark, I don't see a lot of female bartenders, which is something that I'm hoping to change a little bit with mentoring or hiring at my next place. And I don't know why it is. Most girls are waitresses, or if anything, they're bottle or shot girls. There's not really a lot of like empowerment for women in the Danish bar industry yet.
Do you believe it's more because of the hard work environment? Do you believe it's more about sexism, or where do you see it as personal opinion? It could be the problem, and where can be a bit more focusing on the solution?
I think it is just a mentality more than anything. Like, it's very divvied up, where it's like boys are bartenders, girls are waitresses, and we need to get out of that mindset. And if you're a girl and you are in that mindset as well, because that's everyone else is saying that, if you apply somewhere and they're looking for girls as waitresses or something like that, it's a communal mindset that needs to be changed. Because as I said, I've had the majority of my mentors have been incredibly amazing, cool women that have built their way up and really paved the way for a lot of other girls. And I think once you see cool female bartenders as a woman, you're like, oh, I want to do that as well. Because when I was a little baby bartender, I was looking up to some of the guys, and then all of a sudden I started meeting all these amazing female bartenders. I was like, oh, I want to be like them. So it's also very much about the industry embracing women and giving them a platform, very, very much, for sure.
How do you see the guest adaptability to the female bartenders? Because I have some experiences when we were two bartenders and one female bartender.
Yep.
And into my view, correct me if I'm wrong, the females are more willing to go to the female bartenders than to us.
Yes.
As a men's bartender. They feel more secure into it. How do you see it from your perspective?
Well, it goes the other way as well, where I have stood at a bar and the male bartender is making a drink and I'm not, and the guys will just go to the male. It's like, oh, I can make that for you. Oh, no, it's okay. I'll wait for the bartender. You're like, I'm a bartender. So I think it's just normalizing it and giving each other space and supporting each other very, very much. But yeah, it's a mentality on both behind and in front of the bar that needs to change little by little. But, I don't think there is a straightforward solution, because then we would do it.
I hope it will come with time, where more and more female bartenders will also join behind. But I see a good opportunity with all of the competitions, and some brands pushing a bit more the female bartenders in front, which is a very good thing. So we are not only a bunch of dudes behind the
Exactly,
bar.
exactly.
So that's quite cool. Then I have two of my last questions
Yeah.
for you, which one of them, it's a question that I have it for every single guest in here, and one question tailor-made for you. The one that it's static for everybody is like, what motivated you to keep going, being behind the bar every night, every day, every second of your time in there?
Well, the money helped. But I will say the camaraderie, very much. Being part of a family, and that's what I've been so lucky to work in places where, we would hang out outside of work, we'd spend holidays together, and it's sort of like a band of brothers thing where you are in the trenches. When you look up and the bar's 5 people deep, no one else can understand that feeling. You can't go home and explain it to someone who's a teacher, like how that specifically is hard. It's like it's a camaraderie and an understanding that brings you together. So it's very much like the friendships you build and being part of a community. That's really the biggest thing for me.
Mm-hmm. And the question that I have actually tailor-made only for you, because you've been to absolutely fantastic places with absolutely fantastic people. What advice would you give to younger Selma?
I would say believe in yourself more, because I have always been a perfectionist, and I think that I don't really have that gene where a lot of people will move up faster because they're just like, here am I, I'm the best, I can do this, I don't care, you need to pick me because I'm the best person in the room, where I'm more like, oh man, what if I'm not good enough? And so I would say definitely know your worth and trust your talents, and and keep working hard.
That's great. So without further ado, thank you so much, Selma. And thank you for your time being here.
That
really
was so fun.
It. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I do have one last thing I want to say,
absolutely.
and it's a quote that I have lived by. People will never remember what you said or did. They will remember how it made them feel.
Absolutely.
And I think that's so important.
It's so important. It's actually such a great way to sum up what we discussed in here. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
It's fun.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Barbox, the podcast. To check out Selma's book, Spirit of the North, please visit the links in our description. This episode was produced by Mihai Paul and me, Manuel Lică, with thanks to Midnight Media Company. Please find us on YouTube and whatever you are getting your podcast. Be sure you subscribe and rate us.